As soon as you land in Japan, you want to start making the most of your trip. So implementing these critical tips once you touch down will ensure you maximize your time in your dream destination. But before you even get on the plane, there's a number of things you're going to want to make sure that you have in order. The first and the most important is going to be your passport and visa if you need one. For your passport, it's quite simple. Make sure you have one and make sure it's in date. At least for the UK, Japan only requires it to be valid for the length of stay and no additional period of validity is required. On the visa side of things, if you're travelling from countries like the UK or the US and spending 90 days or less in Japan, then you'll be fine. You don't need a visa, just your disembarkation and customs form, which I'll cover off shortly. But I've linked below an official list of all the countries that are visa exempt in Japan, so you can double check for your specific country before your departure. Nearly as important as your passport is making sure you're still connected when you're out in Japan. Unless of course you want to ignore people and use the excuse of having no internet. Whether it's for messages, Google searches or navigation apps, staying online can be a crucial part of enjoying your travels. Unlike some countries, if you're coming from somewhere like the UK or the US again, your time in Japan is unlikely to be covered as part of your mobile package. Therefore, you have three options. 1. Pay for your usage with your current provider. This is arguably the easiest but almost always by far the most expensive option. 2. Get a pocket Wi-Fi. This is not a bad option, particularly if you're going to be in a group, as only one pocket Wi-Fi is needed and therefore you can spread the cost between you. The issue with the pocket Wi-Fi is you have to pick it up once you're in Japan and it's an extra item to carry if you're travelling light. Or 3, the option that I would personally suggest is getting an eSIM. These are great because they tend to be fairly reasonably priced. You have the option to choose different packages based on your needs. You don't have to carry anything additional around with you. There are a number of providers that offer eSIMs in Japan and all of them will do roughly the same thing. The one that we used personally was Mobile and we had no problems after initially setting up the data carrier settings as we land. I'll link their website below as well so you can check out the packages that they offer, but you might also want to check out other suppliers as well, such as Sakura Mobile or Airalo. Regardless of whether you opt for a pocket Wi-Fi or an eSIM, something you will need to carry with you is cash. If you're used to fully cashless payments all the time and just tapping your card or your phone, you'll have to quickly adjust to Japan's heavy reliance on paper notes and coins. Many larger restaurants, konbinis, main shops, etc. will still accept card payments, but smaller restaurants, smaller shops, food stalls and some transportation links will either only accept cash or definitely prefer it. Therefore, it's essential to take some out when you land or come prepared with some already to hand. If you don't want to take out cash before you go, there's plenty of ATMs pretty much everywhere across Japan, including as soon as you land and at pretty much every konbini. But if you can take advantage of a good exchange rate before you leave, it's certainly worth doing. One final note on money is that it's definitely worth investing in a coin purse or similar, particularly if you're someone that only carries a card wallet normally, as you'll be racking up change left, right and centre as you buy beef skewer after beef skewer. Next on the list, you'll probably want to have a place where you've made a note of at least the address of your first hotel, if not of each accommodation you'll be staying at. There's 2 reasons this is useful. 1, you'll need it when you come to fill out the disembarkation papers and custom papers prior to arrival, and having that info available offline comes in really handy. 2, I've not mentioned it yet and I won't go into great detail about it in this video, but luggage forwarding services in Japan can be a lifesaver if you're going from place to place with large suitcases. And I found having addresses and contact information for your accommodations in one place just made it that much easier. Even if it's just an album of screenshots on your phone, which I went for, as writing something down on a piece of paper is just one more thing to lose. Coming hand in hand with staying online in Japan or having the right apps you use when you explore Tokyo and other cities across Japan. Getting these apps installed and set up prior to arrival saves you hassle and time after you land. Some that I would recommend are Nerve if you're particularly worried about natural disasters, XE Currency to convert yen into your local currency, which also works offline, the Klook app if you've used it to book any Shinkansen or other tickets for activities, the digital IC card if you have an iPhone, Tokyo Metro subway map, which works offline as well, and of course Google Maps to help plan your trips and get from one place to another. Finally, the last thing you'll want to make sure you have in order before you leave is your transport. There's 3 points you really want to take care of here, and each of them are really important to get right. The first one is your IC cards. Having an IC card in Japan allows you to pay for a lot of transport links such as trains, metros and buses, but also allows you to pay for items at convenience stores. There's multiple IC card providers, with the two main ones being Suica and Passmo. Either of these will do pretty much the same thing of allowing you to pay for your transportation just using one card, but the way you get them is slightly different. If you have an iPhone, you can get a digital version of the IC card and put it in your Apple Wallet, so you don't have to worry about losing it or even where you have to pick it up in the first place. If you have an Android like me, however, that wasn't bought in Japan, you'll have to grab an IC card after you land at either the airport or one of the major stations such as Tokyo Central Station. In the second section about landing, I'll come on to where you can pick one up at the airport. The second item on transport is the JR Pass and booking any Shinkansen tickets ahead of time. I'll drop a link below for a website to work out whether the JR Pass is worth it for you to purchase or not. But the short answer is probably no. A lot of people that have been to Japan in the past will swear by the JR Pass, but unfortunately after the price hike in recent years, it's very unlikely that it's going to be worth it for you, and you're probably better off purchasing individual Shinkansen tickets. If you are booking the Shinkansen tickets ahead of time, then SmartX and Klook are the two best ways I've found of getting your tickets. Both will allow you to purchase them, but Klook tends to be more user-friendly, albeit at a slightly higher price. I've used both when planning the trip, and I had good experiences with both of them. And now the final part, getting from the airport to your first destination. So, you've prepared everything. All your documents are in order, your yen is ready to be spent, and you're raring to go. You land in the airport. Now what? If you're landing in Haneda Airport, this next section is going to be a total lifesaver for you. I've personally never flown into Narita as it's further from the city and much less convenient, so I'm not going to be covering that specifically, but some of these points may still be relevant. When you first land, you'll be taken through customs, where you'll either give in the slip you filled out on the plane or scan through the one that you filled out online. Once you're through customs and baggage reclaim, you'll be greeted with this sight, the arrivals hall. There's a lot to take in, but it's actually pretty simple. If you didn't take cash out and you're looking for an ATM, you'll want to look left or right, and you'll see ATMs hugging both of these walls. If you need to forward luggage to your accommodation or your next destination, or you're looking to pick up a Sakura Mobile pocket Wi-Fi, you'll want to look right and head all the way down the end to the JAL ABC counter. This is signposted as mainly a luggage forwarding area, but you can also pick up the pocket Wi-Fi here too. However, if you're just looking to get right into the city, continue walking straight as you head out of the arrival exit, past the Tourist Information Centre in the middle, and then on your right you'll have the Keikyu line, and on your left you'll have the Japanese monorail. If you're looking for a welcome Suica, head to the machines on the left, next to the monorail entrance. If you're looking for the Passmo cards, it's on the right, at the information desk next to the Keikyu line. The welcome Suica is valid for 28 days and for tourists only. No deposit is required, and you can keep the card when you leave. The Passmo is valid for up to 10 years, but also requires a 500 yen deposit, which you can get back if you return the card. Bear in mind, either of these could be in low supply or out of stock when you get there, so it's definitely worth using a digital version if you can, or being flexible as to which one you pick up. And now, finally, when it comes to getting to Tokyo city centre, you have three main options. Take a taxi. These tend to be fairly expensive in Tokyo, but are the most luxurious option when it comes to getting into the city centre. The second main option is to take a limousine bus. These are pretty easy to get into the city and make direct stops at some major hotels, but do tend to be slower than the other major options. Your third main option is my favourite, which is taking the Tokyo monorail or the Keikyu line into the city. This was the option that we chose as we wanted to get into Tokyo as fast as possible, and I much prefer a metro over a bus anyway. The decision between the Keikyu line and the monorail is as easy as putting your next destination into Google Maps and finding out, which is honestly much better done ahead of time so you know where you're going. As a general rule of thumb, the west side of the city can be reached slightly faster on the Keikyu line, whereas the east side of the city can be reached slightly faster from the Tokyo monorail. If the time difference between the two is negligible, the monorail does provide a better view as you go across Tokyo's Bay Area. So now you've cracked the code, you're in the city, ready to explore, and if you're looking for things to do while you're in Tokyo, check out this video here for my recommendations. If this video was useful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you enjoy this content, consider subscribing to the channel.